Don't do. So we will kick it off with Neil, and we will be talking about use of force, traffic and pedestrian, um, FOIA issue, what Sean will hit on some, and investigating, uh, can't see the other word, they block.
Are we overcounting arrests?
Right. I was shocked about that, and I said, they don't arrest as many people as I thought they did. Interesting. So, Neil,
All right. Well, hey, everyone. So we're going to first start talking off about use of force. We're going to talk about some data points on that, traffic stop data points, and pedestrian data stop points. So let's get it going. All right. So you've seen these types of data cards on our social media and our website before. What we are doing now is at least every 6 months. We're going to try to do this quarterly or monthly if I can make Sean pass out from work. These are data points that we want to keep updated so our community knows what type of activity our police department's doing. First data point I want to direct you to is that officer initiated use of force against Black people is at 73%. That from our last data report, that's up by 3%. Officers citing fear as a reason for using force in their reports, 76% of the time it was when they were engaging with an African-American resident. That is up 15% from our last report. Next is use of force from traffic stops. Previously, it was at 1 in 5, now it's at 1 in 6. So it's a little bit of a drop, but still highlights how dangerous a traffic stop can be for anyone for that matter. Next is Taser. Taser is the second most frequent use of force weapon. The first most use of force tactic right now is just the straight takedown. You know, that's just getting the person on the ground, tripping them, knocking them over, whatever it is. But when the officers choose to escalate beyond a standard takedown, the next thing they go with is the Taser. And then last but not least on this page, a new data point that we want to track, especially considering Evanston's research into alternatives to police response. And so what we're highlighting is that 12% of use of force reports came during a mental health crisis. Next data points I want to talk about are traffic stop related. Most of these are fairly unchanged from last time we reported this, but I still think it's important to just bring up yet again. First thing I like to talk about is stop and fish, as I'm calling it. And that is that African-American drivers in Evanston are twice as likely to not be ticketed over white drivers. So you have to ask yourself, why are they being pulled over in the first place if they're not getting tickets? With that said, they are, according to Benchmark, being pulled over about 9 times more than white drivers in Evanston. And our Latinx allies have 4 times more than white drivers. Now, when it comes to dog sniff vehicle searches, Black drivers are experiencing this 7 times more than white drivers. And the last 2 stats are staying fairly similar, which is that when an officer does search a vehicle, Black drivers are 6.6 times more likely to be searched than white drivers, and Latinx drivers are about 5.2 times more. So there's definitely a racial disparity in how our traffic stops are being handled in Evanston. Now, this is something that is fairly disturbing at first look, and that is our pedestrian stops. As you can see, minorities are stopped at a much higher rate than the white pedestrians. Black pedestrians at 19 times more than whites, and our Latinx at 2 times more. So there seems to be race-based policing going on in Evanston. And we will continue to update these data points as we get more information. I should point out that all these data points are coming from Freedom of Information Act requests that CNP is putting out there. I'm going to do things a little differently than we have in the past. I want to just quickly open this up for questions. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, or just straight up, Karen, I think you just raised your hand. Feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, I want to go back to the very first data point.
Okay.
The updated use of force data point, 73% of Evanston police officer initiated use of force is against Black people. So does that mean that, well, I guess when I read it that time, it makes more sense to me.
The officers are deciding to put hands on someone.
Yeah, and 73% of the time when they do, they're putting their hands on a Black person.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. I mean, obviously not great.
Right. Sean, or Austin, I think you had a question.
Yes, thanks, Neil. Based on the updated statistics, is there a general indication of whether the use of force is like the rate of use of force, or the number of incidents, is it staying the same, going up, or going down versus the last time that we've collected data?
So this has been an incremental increase in data, but I will better answer that question for you when we transition to our next section. So I think you're trying to give me a really good transition, aren't you? Because that's exactly what we're going into. So I will answer that question, but I'm not going to answer this second. Does anyone else have any questions right now? No? Okay, I'm going to move on. So as you can see on this screen, Foia fumbles is what we're calling this. All right, so here are our Foia requests, the Foia requests that have been made to the Evanston Police Department since January of 2020. We have done 87 of them. Of the 87, 65 were actually released within the legal time constraints. 41 were released late. Now, when someone says late, we're talking about a day, an hour. No, we're actually talking about over 2 weeks late. And in one case, over 120 days late for our FOIAs on questions just like you were asking, Austin. Now, for denials, some of them are very justified. It's simply that they don't have the records we were asking for. Either we formulated the question wrong, or what we were asking for doesn't exist in the way that they have it, and they're not willing to kind of give us some guidance on where they're supposed to go. With that said, when denied, we've gone to the Attorney General because sometimes we don't think we should be denied. And on 9 times, someone has said, the Attorney General's office said, yeah, you shouldn't have been denied that by the Evanston Police Department. So I want to quickly bring in Sean, who is kind of our expert FOIA team member, and he's going to kind of explain what was happening during these appeals. Sean.
Hey guys. So this might answer your question, Austin. So specifically, in the last quarter, quarter 4 of 2020, we talked about a number of FOIAs that we either had received incomplete or discovered that there were files that were not released to us. Our use of force data is based off of what Evanston has released to us. We have put in FOIAs for use of force data between 2016 to August, September 2020. In pursuit of this data, when we realized that there was data missing and we sent in a request for review, we discovered that 24 use of force reports had never been released to us by the Evanston Police Department. So we continued, we put in a new FOIA request in order to try to figure out where this data was and to see if we could obtain it. And go ahead and do the next slide. What we ended up receiving was an index of all the use of force reports that Evanston Police Department had or knew that they had between 2016 and 2020. And while we only received six use of force reports, which we have since updated our data with, we also discovered that an additional 22 use of force reports had not been released to us. So we are currently in mediation with Evanston Police Department in order to obtain those use of force reports to get a complete picture of all the use of force that Evanston Police Department is doing between 2016 and 2020.
So just to summarize, we're talking about 46 reports that the Evanston Police Department should have released to us, never released to us. When we pressured them on it, they didn't release them to us, and we only accidentally discovered them through appeal.
Right, and this appeal process has been going on for about 4 or 5 months now, and the number of reports that are currently missing from what we had requested is about 20% of all the use of force reports that were generated during that time period.
So statistically, just to summarize, 75% of our requests were granted. 47% were late. 25 were denied. And I just ruined the joke. But the rest is that there's more to come. As you all know from the famous Billy Mays. Let's talk about officer misconduct reports. These are another style of report, just like Foia's. And this is infractions that police officers made that the department decided to investigate and possibly give them an infraction for. And so like you see with the info boxes here, 12% were given infractions for law breaking. 24% were given infractions for sleeping through court. And 26 were given infractions for wrecking their cars. So that's the kind of data that these officer infraction sheets give us. We must have really embarrassed the police department when we released this information, because when we just did our updated FOIA on this, this is what we got. How much information do you guys see? I'm not catching much, are you? Not sure why they did this either. So we decided to find out why they redacted officer misconduct reports that we didn't have a problem getting last time. And when we pushed back, the police department, specifically Alexandria Ruggie, the assistant attorney for the city, cited 5 ILCS 140.71C as the main reason why she ain't going to give us this information. So let's go open up that big old law book and see what actually that's saying to us, okay? Words, words, words at the beginning. The last sentence is really the most important one. The disclosure of information that bears on the public duties, public employees and officials shall not be considered an invasion of privacy. The city is redacting information citing personal privacy and using this as the reason, but their own legal reason says this is not the case. So we don't have information on officer infractions. We don't know what bad stuff they're doing that they're getting caught doing. And we don't know why the city's not giving it to us other than that they just don't feel like it. So let's kick it off to another set of questions. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Neil. Do we have a sense? I mean, the statistic on law breaking, or how like discipline for like law breaking is really concerning. Do we have any sense of like what exactly that might look like? I mean, it seems like if this was like major, like serious violations, you know, we'd maybe hear more about that. Can you give us some insight?
Yeah, so law breaking is a specific term that they're using for infractions. And it can be something as simple as lying to a passenger to say that they have to tell their identification to an officer, even though they're not legally required to. And if you recall, that was something that CNP highlighted a couple months ago that happened. And then Alderwoman Cicely Fleming kind of really finger wagged the police chief over. So that's the kind of law breaking that they're really talking about. They're not talking about, an assault or something like that. It's just breaking police rules.
So
Jane,
Neil,
I think you had a question. Well, unmute yourself real quick. There you
Yeah,
go.
I'm new to this group and forum, so maybe others already know this, but so how do you let city council members know about this kind of specific thing? Do you go to the public speaking portion of a city council meeting, or are you transmitting this to city council members in a regular way? It sure seems like something city council members ought to be pissed off about.
Right. And in the past, Betty, Sean, Austin, and I, and Carlos, another board member, we have all made comments about this at City Hall public comment, at Human Resources or Human Services public comment. In some cases, we get their ear. In some cases, we don't. So that's why we would like to inform citizenry like this in these community meetings. So you can also put pressure on your alderman to be like, hey, I heard this at CNP. What are you going to do about it? Because I'm sure everyone here has noticed that kind of aldermen, after a while, kind of their eyes gloss over if they keep seeing the same people critiquing them. And that's kind of what we're experiencing, I think. Yeah, go ahead, Norman.
Glad to be in this meeting here for the first time. This problem seems to be, outside of the fact that we have it going on here just alone in Evanston, is a national problem. And I feel, and I could be completely wrong, because I've been paying more attention now that because of COVID, I've had the time to sit home and really get involved and see what's going on. I've had too much time not to, and then seeing all these different videos through Facebook and so on what the police can and can't do. I feel that if it's happening nationally, it's going to be very hard to change it in our little space here. I know we can't speak for the national system. I myself, and I'm going to have some FOIA requests because of the stuff that I'm going through here in my home in Evanston. I live in the 8th Ward, and we are going to have new aldermen here eventually. It just comes down to me that the transparency isn't there. They don't want it there. And it seems to be that is something in general with police. So at the end of the day, I'm more than willing to climb up the Evanston Police's tail, but it's a national issue that we're kind of dealing with here, especially for me being a Black man. I just moved back from living in Denmark. I'm buying a car soon, and I'm telling you the truth, I'm kind of scared. So, when I look at this information here, that the police don't want the transparency because we all know that they're doing dirt, and so now they're covering themselves.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have to agree with you on a lot of that. What I would say though, and at the end of the presentation, I'm going to kind of give you maybe a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. I think maybe the new administration hopefully will be more malleable with the new mayor, considering that he does support a lot of CNP's initiatives that we want to push for additional transparency. So I will highlight that at the end and we can discuss that. But I do agree, the FOP, police in general, they do not like transparency because it means accountability. And we need to work on that. And I think part of accountability though is making sure our elected officials know that they have to be accountable to us and that they're technically the bosses, and they're the ones that can pressure the city manager to do what the city manager is supposed to do, which is look over the police department. Gosh, that's a real windy way to get in charge of the police department, isn't it? Anyways,
so
Karen, do you have any questions?
yeah, so my first question is, and thanks to everybody who's working all these FOIA requests and appeals. Have you appealed that redaction from Ms. Ruge to the Attorney General? The police misconduct report being so heavily redacted? Is that on appeal?
That is on appeal.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing that. And, that is that's her MO. I started working with her on the police complaint commission stuff. When she was staffing that committee 2.5 years ago or so. And now seeing her under the more recent leadership of the law department, she doesn't want us to know anything about anything. And I'm glad to hear you say that about a change of administration, because, I'm optimistic, whoever we get in the 8th Ward, Norman, is going to do better than our current alderman has about, listening to this and not sitting idly by when it comes to police matters. But thanks for doing all that follow up with them, with the Attorney General, State's Attorney, whatever.
Chuck, I think you have a question.
Well,
Oh, I just wanted to say a comment. I'm actually from Wisconsin, from Shorewood, which is sort of like Evanston is to Chicago, Shorewood is to Milwaukee. And the efforts that you guys do and what you guys are doing, we have a similar police group that I take the ideas from these meetings and bring it there to try hold our police department accountable. And we get the same sort of issues. We're not as organized quite as you guys, but it is inspiring the work you're doing, and it's helping other communities. And our community is an inspiration for other communities in Wisconsin, such as Wauwatosa, where there's been 3 police officer shootings of people. So there is efforts that help doing this kind of stuff. So
I thank you.
so I wanted to say thank you to you guys for that.
Well, it's really nice to hear that, and do email us. We can talk offline, come up with ideas and stuff like that in the future.
Neil,
Yes.
to Mr. Norman King, would say, you don't be despair and say our little space here is what make the national what it is. And if we start changing here, they will notice it. And I do want to let you know that the NACO, which is the National Association for Oversight Committee, they are working on a proposal to send to Washington to help with these matters. We are working. It's going to take time. So we need lots of voices like yours.
Yes.
And thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
So to move on, things are like Billy May says, wait, there's more. Here we go. Let's talk about investigations that are ongoing at the CNP.
So I've got a question for everybody at the meeting. When we talk about arrests, when we say somebody was arrested, how would you define arrest? What is an arrest? And if anybody has thoughts on that, I would love to hear from the audience how they personally would define an arrest.
Being detained and having a record of the arrest made.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to jail for something you did wrong.
Or maybe not have did wrong.
Yes.
Well, true. For something they think that you did wrong.
Yes.
The court says that an arrest includes being taken into custody. That's the constitutional definition.
Mm-hmm.
Right, just taken, you're being taken somewhere, not by your agreement to do so, and for some legal, under some legal authority.
Mm-hmm. And then Norman, did you have?
Yeah, I was gonna say, to me, what an arrest is, it's kind of like a broad question, what is an arrest? Because what an arrest should be based on somebody breaking a crime. And I'm sorry, I'm not very good at catching names here, and I'm not very good at seeing everybody on the screen here, but a gentleman that said earlier, if it is a crime or isn't a crime. So, an arrest to me would be kind of what she said, you're taken into custody, you have supposedly broken a crime, you've been taken into custody, and then paperwork that follows that would set you into the court system and having to come and defend yourself for whatever purpose it was.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and I think most people would agree with you. Let's go to the next slide. I would say that most cities would as well. For example, we have here. This is.
Wilmette and Cicero.
Thank you. We've got Wilmette and Cicero, where arrests or crime incidents are reported. And for each arrest, we have a number of charges that somebody was charged with. And the arrest bulletin itself, which gets sent out to news agencies and is publicly available online for anybody to search, clearly states that these, even though folks show up in these arrest bulletins, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're guilty until convicted. Most arrest bulletins that you find will say that. And so these showing an arrest where somebody is taken into custody is actually one form of arrest. Another form of arrest is actually a non-custodial form of arrest, which most people would actually not be too familiar with. A non-custodial arrest may show up as, say, you are pulled over for doing a traffic violation, moving violation, something like that. And it turns out you don't have your driver's license on you. You're given a citation ticket. You're told to appear in court or pay the fine, plead guilty, so on and so forth. And then you're led on your way. That in the legal system is called a non-custodial arrest. It doesn't generate an arrest report because you weren't taken into custody. But it is defined as an arrest, which is super interesting. But anyway,
that legally, that's not an arrest. I mean, there's a legal definition that's binding on the country that says arrest includes custody. What you're talking about is a non-custodial stop. The word arrest does not apply to the scenario you're describing.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think that's super interesting. I absolutely believe you. What I've been finding online is that many lawyers disagree what does and doesn't constitute an arrest, but most lawyers I've run into do agree with you, Betsy, that an arrest is not an arrest until you've actually been taken in, booked, released with a court date in mind, or a fine. Anyways, this is what Evanston shows in their crime bulletin. And what we're looking at right now is multiple arrests of one person happening at almost the exact same time. So the question is, was this person arrested 9 times in a matter of a few minutes or simultaneously? And why is this being reported like this in our crime bulletin? How did this come about? So in mid-February, the CMP noticed something like this. What appeared to be duplicate arrest records and a Foia release that was provided by the city of crime bulletin data that spanned between late 2015 and late 2020. It appeared to be multiple arrests, like you're seeing here, occurring simultaneously to the same person. After a deeper search, it became clear that this was actually happening to multiple individuals. Arrests happening either simultaneously, within minutes of each other, or when it appeared as though the arrestee was still in police custody and being processed. In total, the issue appeared to apply to about 10% of more than 5,000 arrest incidents in the crime bulletin. Next. So we turned to the police department for clarification about why this was happening and how it connected to the arrest counts the city was providing in their annual report, or the total adult arrests that they provided on their city website for 2016 and 2017. Next. Rather than clearing up any confusion regarding their reporting methods, the police department designated a city attorney, specifically Alexandra Ruggie, to respond to us. In subsequent emails, the city attorney described these near simultaneous arrests as singular arrests due to multiple case numbers being associated with each arrest involved. Next. Upon further inquiry for clarification, the city attorney clarified that these arrests may not be physical arrests, and that though many may have occurred simultaneously to the same person, the city counted each individually as its own arrest. Next. When we then asked for our initial questions to be answered, like how these related to the arrests reported in the police annual report, or the total arrest count reported in the city's investigative stops or contact cards page, the city attorney seemed to misunderstand the question and recommended that we consult with our own legal counsel before we made any further inquiries. This is very concerning. It's important not to jump to any conclusions, but this is a terrible response to good faith efforts to gain clarity on how our city is tracking and reporting public safety data. Why is the city telling us to consult a lawyer before consulting the city about how the city operates? We're left confused regarding the crime bulletin. Now, the city makes clear that the arrests reported in the crime bulletin are not always physical, or what we would call custodial arrests. With this thought in mind, we looked once more at the crime bulletin the city had provided us. Now, from late 2015 through late 2020, we found that they included as arrests what might ordinarily be civil infraction citations, such as those handed out for littering, being drunk in public, or being loud between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. And during that same time, the crime bulletin also includes an enormous amount of what we might think of as traffic tickets. Nearly 1,500, or about 30% of what the city defines as individual arrests in this crime bulletin we have, includes anything from failing to stop at a stop sign, failing to yield at an intersection, or driving without a seatbelt, to having an expired registration sticker, not having not having a valid insurance card on you, or driving with a revoked/suspended license. And these are all far more likely to result in fines and citations than physical arrest. And as drivers are typically given citations to pay fines or challenge the ticket in court and are allowed to leave, they rarely generate arrest reports. Nevertheless, Evanston includes them in the crime bulletin as individual arrests. This is concerning. This is a public searchable information on the internet, sent out to newspapers, and anyone who wants to sign up can receive these bulletins. And since most citizens may not have been physically arrested, they can be surprised to find that the city has published that they've been arrested when they've only received a ticket. Furthermore, we don't know how Evanston is counting these arrests. How Evanston tracks and reports its arrest data is important for residents to know. It provides us with a metric with which we can measure the department's efficiency. Do we need as many officers as we employ? As well as how many folks are breaking laws and the city, state, or nation has set down. being as transparent as possible about whether we are looking at multiple charges for one physical arrest or multiple physical arrests within a few minutes is key to keeping the community informed and engaged in our ongoing conversation about how we would like our public safety to look like. Next. Now, it appears as though the format of crime bulletins is not set in stone. The police department can choose to publish these reports in a different, more transparent format. For example, what we might see in Skokie, Wilmette, or even Cicero. Now, CMP will continue looking at this, but I'll leave everybody with this. It appears as though we are at a point where we, as residents and stakeholders of Evanston, are able to engage with the city in conversation about what transparency means to us and what it should look like. The question I have for you is, what information do you guys want the police department to provide? And how would you like it to look like? Next.
That's it, other than something I wanted to show Norman. But before we go there, I want to just open this up for questions. So you just saw an interesting kind of report on arrest data. So yeah, Matt Mitchell.
Sean, thank you for this. It's fascinating. Are you able to glean whether it's? I mean, I get the Daily Bulletin, and it's clear they're not publicizing every petty traffic offense. So is it always with a misdemeanor traffic or with a criminal charge, and it's an add-on?
You know, I had the same question in another Foia release that we received from the city, where we specifically asked the city to denote what was misdemeanors, what was citations, and what was felonies. It became clear that there was actually a mix. So yes, there are misdemeanor traffic violations that are included, but there are also tickets or infractions. Other cities provide narratives with their crime bulletins to let us know why exactly it was included in the crime bulletin. For example, whether or not a citizen was taken in and processed as a custodial arrest, or whether or not they were simply given a ticket and released. Ours does not. And unfortunately, in order to know the full answer of that, we either need to ask the department to clarify for us what is going on, or we need to FOIA request the incident number itself.
And so my follow-up then, when we're getting big picture data from the Evanston Police Department, are they counting arrests, non-misdemeanor traffic stops as arrests?
That's the same question we're asking.
Yep.
Yeah. That would be troubling.
You know, Matthew, I think that's a great question, and I was thinking the same thing. So I grew up on having the Evanston Review. We used to be able to go in there and see the police blotter and all that. And I saw that, look, Jane, you're like, I took you back, didn't I? Is that you had this section here of the paper that would say certain things. And sometimes it would say that this person made a illegal right turn so-and-so. And then you'll see the word arrest pop up in that. I think it even happens now as you look at some of the police reports that come out now, that it says, okay, so-and-so blew a stop sign, and then the word arrest. And I can't really say in detail because I'm not going to say that I recall exactly what it was, but I do recall seeing the word arrest when it comes down to small infractions, violations, I would say, that, I mean, citation stuff that you go to court and of course see something, but I do see the word arrest. And I wonder, and it's not consistent because on other things that you may see posted, you don't see the word arrest.
Well, and then also, you can sign up for that daily bulletin, but the daily bulletin is not comprehensive. Somebody is using some unknown criteria to create this selection of yesterday's activity to put on this crime bulletin, which is then emailed to people who sign up for it, and as you've mentioned, provided to the press if they ask for it. So I've always wondered, who is that person and what are their criteria?
And Sean, I want to add this because I have some experience in Cook County criminal, is generally if there's a traffic arrest and there's a petty traffic offense with a misdemeanor, the petty traffic is going to follow the misdemeanor. And the same goes for a felony. There is felony traffic. DUI where someone's hurt, DUI where kids are involved, suspended license for, or suspended, revoked. If you're revoked for a DUI, it can be felony. And so even if there's petty traffic in a felony misdemeanor or a felony traffic case, the charge will go with it. Even if it's turning on a, no turn on a red, it'll be in the felony case at 26 in California.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And what's interesting is there are some cases where there are combined traffic citations, traffic offenses, where one is either a felony or a misdemeanor. But they're in the FOIA that the city provided, where they denoted what was misdemeanor, felony, infraction, ticket, so on and so forth. There were traffic arrests, or rather traffic incidences in that crime bulletin that were all by themselves, that were not misdemeanors or felonies.
Slow day for crime, I guess. So if there are no more questions, I just, Norman, you probably aren't familiar with something else that CNP is working on, so I just want to highlight it real quick for everyone. And that is that we need independent oversight in Evanston. CNP is working on an ordinance with a couple of experts who are helping us design something to really bring transparency and accountability to the Evanston Police Department. This is something that our to-be mayor has reviewed and endorsed, and he's made it talking points to his own campaign. But this is also something that a lot of different independent oversight groups are kind of giving the thumbs up to. So some of the main big selling points is having an independent board that is elected, not selected by the mayor. We want the ability to have this board to initiate its own investigations, not just be handed investigations or initiate investigations based on complaints. So if we smell something, we should be able to chase it, not wait for a victim to show up. We want this group to also evaluate the potential racial impact of new policies and current policies, so we can try to end race-based policing. We want complaints to be investigated and resolved within 120 days. About 6 months ago, we had complaints that were over a year old that had not been resolved yet. And so think about the trauma that victim is experiencing every single day, waiting for their day in court, so to say, We want the ability to compel the police chief to explain why they're doing something or why they're not doing something, not just be able to say, hey, it is what it is. We also want to be able to provide recommendations for new policies. This independent oversight group is seeing everything as it's coming in. They should be able to give their 2 cents and make adjustments. And again, the big one is the subpoena power. We need the ability to compel people to give us the evidence they need. As you can tell from our FOIAs, they're not doing it even when the Attorney General compels them. So we need that extra bump to really make sure that the accountability is where we need it. So these are, as I joke, kind of like the 10 commandments to police independent oversight and accountability. There's more, but these are kind of the more important ones. CNP has a document that we will be releasing soon that highlights this stuff and will be available to the community to review. And then we'll be holding some community events to discuss it, because this is a community document. While we might be the authors of it, this is for the community and should be by the community. And so again, keep them accountable, stay informed. That's why we're here. And we really appreciate everyone showing up tonight. Any other questions?
I'd like to say thank you for this. I kind of ran across this on Facebook, and I'd like to be part of it. I kind of feel like I'm, for once now here in Evanston, you know, really getting involved, because I feel like we need to. And a lot of stuff, you know, I mean, I grew up here in Evanston, and now, you know, my kid doesn't go to school here. And sometimes I kind of feel like I'm fortunate that my kid doesn't, but this is my home, you know, and I'm getting frustrated with seeing things and the things that are happening on a regular, constant basis that are beyond blatant. You know, I mean, it's like you got a video, and then they're like, "No, that's not true." You know, I'm like, "You got to be kidding me!" I saw it, you saw it, everybody saw it, but evidently, you guys see something else. Sorry about the horn in the background. Hockey fan here. Uh, you know, I would like to get involved a little bit more. I think there's a lot of education that I need to bring on for myself and understanding certain laws and certain things. But I want to be in some sort of form a help for change in this community. And, you know, Betty, I like what you said. You're 100% right that we are a start of something major that's happening in this country. And maybe we can be another word that's going to help in policing, because we have seen way too much stuff happen in this country. And that's the reason why I kind of brought the essence of that this is a national issue. And I didn't want to kind of make it seem like just because we're little tiny Evanston that our word didn't matter. But I feel like it takes something from the top for us to get something to start working here. Because to me, it just seems like this constant lack of transparency. I mean, what are you hiding? What's there to hide? You know, I mean, good grief. I mean, I have issues in my neighborhood right now, living here in the 8th Ward, that I can't seem to get the obvious taken care of, but yet the police are going to go screw at other people for baloney. I want to keep my tongue, you know, so it's frustrating. And as much as I call the police, it's kind of like exactly what you said. They they're kind of trying, but then it stops. There's no continuation. And especially in my situation that I'm dealing with, it is frustrating beyond belief.
Right. One of the things that we did in our early progression to here, and I think we need to have some more of those, is we have the police department to come and tell us, okay, what is the function? What is this function for? How do you do this? Why do you do it this way? And one of the functions that they do, which me is kind of is backwards. They have what these things that they clear murders on the back of another murder. Hey, I kill you, months go by, maybe year go by, and then here comes Karen, she kills me for whatever reason, and then they say, oh, we cleared Mr. King's death because, well, Betty killed them. And we said, well, did you get evidence? Well, we have this evidence, but we didn't have enough to take it to court. Well, if you didn't have enough to take it to court, how can you say that Betty did it? And then they use the standards, and we are going to have them come back in to bring the written standards and things that they use from the FBI, how to clear the death of someone else from the death of another person. So we will have that discussion again and have it hopefully in depth, more details and stuff. So we have those kind of forums. We ask the community, okay, what would you like us to do? But the main things that I personally ask the community to be is not to be silent, because being silent is that you condone it. In this country now, they're in such an uproar over the incident of George Floyd. He got killed. It shouldn't have happened, how awful that is. But just stop and count the number of deaths that happened before him. And they meant they was still going on, and Mr. Floyd deaths happened because we in this country did not hold our police accountable to the action and stuff, to tell them, hey, you don't hold, this is how you arrest somebody, you don't do these things. So now we hope that many communities will be stepping up and saying this to their police force and stuff. And then you have to kind of ask them, why do you have all of these statistics and they not clear, they not valid? What is the reason for you using these statistics that clearly does not reflect what you do? So those are the type of questions that we have to ask the community.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to jump in real quick here and say something. After living in Denmark for a period of time and coming back to the States, and now my son is back and he's, involved in the military. It befuddles me, the policing nationwide. But here I am. I come back to little tiny Evanston here. We're not that small. I mean, we're a pretty big city here, and the police are armed like they're going to war. I mean, these guys have got. I remember being in downtown. I was meeting up with a friend, and I'm not a coffee person. I was at Starbucks, for instance, and this guy walks in, and he's strapped to the T. And I started looking around myself, and I was like, "Dude, where am I? What's going on here? Is this an intimidation tactic?" I mean, it's too much. I mean, the police. It, Another thing too, unfortunately, Betty, and I'm going to say this about keeping the police accountable. The system is set up so you cannot keep the police accountable, because when you try to keep the police accountable, they take all that information and they do what they want with it because we can't see it. And the whole situation of having Foia out there now, Foia is kind of set up in the essence on what they want to show, because it's not 100% transparency. It's they're letting you see what they want you to see.
But we are a community, and one thing that we do in this community, we do see what's going on, and you have people that see the different incident, give them that information. And those are the people that when you give the police some information and stuff, and then you see that that information is not used or publicized correctly, then you're supposed to speak up, say, hey, wait a minute, I didn't tell you that. You can't do that. And the next thing is, well, if you can't do what we say, and since we do pay you, then hey, you have to go. So we have to start looking at what is our responsibility, the community. What is our responsibility to keeping them honest in everything, because we pay them to protect us, keep us safe and stuff. And we have a certain standard that this is how we want you to do it. And you must live up to this. But if the community don't make that standard and stand behind it to enforce it, they will keep doing what they are doing.
Jane, I
So
think
we'd
you're-
love to have you here. I'm sorry, go ahead now.
no, Jane, I think you raised your hand.
Yeah, I had two kind of unrelated stray thoughts about going forward. Does CNP have yet a copy of the current collective bargaining agreement between the city and the Evanston Police Union?
We do.
Okay, and because I mean, examining that is a really important place to sometimes find answers to some of these mysteries about why something is reported or not reported or acted on or not acted on, or why certain disciplines. But anyway, second is, do you have any silent, I'll call them silent partners on the police force, people who support the kind of reforms CNP is trying to implement, who are being willing to be, you know, sort of deep throat to you? I mean, not necessarily revealing stuff, but helping you understand stuff that's going on without revealing their identity. Because otherwise I have an idea about maybe a pathway to building some of those bridges.
You know,
Yes, we have had police officers that have worked with us and helped us to start putting together the proposal and everything. Unfortunate, they retired and they didn't live in Evanston. So I have contact still with one of them, but they did help us and would push us to ask different questions and everything. So for them to come to the community and tell them, you know, this is what the police is doing. But right now, we don't. So we have to cultivate another person to.
Well, I just wonder if any Evanston police officers have gotten involved with a union that has formed, or an organization of police officers that has formed in the city of Chicago of Black police officers who feel that the FOP is not appropriately representing them. And I think that they are probably their members are much more inclined to have police departments have openness. And I just wonder if there's any crossover of Evanston officers with that new offshoot organization in the city of Chicago.
actually, there is. We are friends with one of the organizers of that group, and he has helped us understand some of the ways. But Chicago operates on a very different spectrum than Evanston Police. But he has been able to give us insight in the past, and he is one of those organizers. Yeah.
And he might identify then some kindred spirit in Chicago who would be willing to be behind, you know, a screen helping
Yeah. Well,
a currently employed officer.
yes, we're always looking to bribe some spies. I mean, look for partners. Yes. Matt, I think you had a question.
I did. My question is, has CNP ever pursued litigation for Evanston failing to comply with FOIA?
No, we have not. I can speak to that. No, we have not. I think it's certainly a place we would like to get to. You know, I think we've gotten to the point where, like, right, this is not, you know, one-off incidences, and we need to hold the police accountable and hold the city accountable. I think one of the things that I would like to put in a plug to help CNP get to that point is we are always looking for, you know, Evanston attorneys to help, you know, to represent us, to like join CNP. Right now, we are all like volunteer based. Like, this is a fully people powered movement that CNP is. We, you know, so this is a kind of a plug for funding request also. Like, we would love to be able to, you know, have some funding to be able to, you know, at least have enough funds to kind of file some of these cases, right? Like, pursue some of these actions.
I think there's statutory attorney fees too, if you're successful.
Yeah.
Well, considering what you've seen with the FOIAs, I think we do have a decent case, and maybe CNP just needs to get together and start screaming for attorney help and you know, really solidify our case and move it forward, because city's not living up to what it's supposed to do.
Are there penalties under state law when the Attorney General makes a finding against a city for withholding?
You have to enforce it.
Who has to enforce it?
You have to, you can there's two ways to file a FOIA lawsuit. One is to just go to court and say the state's or the entity is not following FOIA. The other is if you get a binding PAC opinion, you can take that to court to enforce it.
Well, okay, that gets the information. I'm talking about a penalty that would be create a deterrent.
It's statutory, $2,500 to $5,000, and it can be per offense
Per
per day, I believe.
No, that's correct, Matthew.
Yeah, and my husband is a journalist, said it almost never happens.
So Mike, I guess one thing that occurred to me though is if you did it in Evanston, I think you would probably file in Chancery at Skokie. You'd end up in front of the same judge or judges regularly. And if you were able to kind of lay a good framework and went back, you end up filing the same case again and again. Judges lose patience quickly.
Yeah, they get to-
That's a great idea. Yeah, because they'll get tired of seeing us, just like city council does.
Well, Neil, they'll get tired of having to take the city to task. They won't get tired of the plaintiff.
Oh, well, yeah.
And the city council should get tired of the city having to pay attorney's fees. You know, we don't need to be spending a lot of money defending wrong acts by the city.
Well, they don't seem to mind paying out penalties for staff members who behave badly toward their employees. They keep losing those lawsuits.
You know what? Speaking of lawsuits, to jump in here, oddly to say, even if we do keep the police accountable and they do something wrong, we end up paying for it anyway, because if the police goes ahead and hits Johnny in the head and Johnny says, I'm suing you for $1 million, then the police goes and gives the police officer a little kiss, and then they pay $1 million out with our money. And then what have you solved? I mean, unfortunately, this person is scarred for life. They've got $1 million and the police gets to go on, and we are the ones that still get stuck with the bill, and the police get to continue doing what they do, and then it happens again, and then we pay out again, and then it never stops. So, I don't want to say that we shouldn't fight to make this thing happen, but this is a cycle that's been going on for a long time, and it doesn't seem to bother them. And the more we speak about it, the more it happens, it just.
And
I mean,
the city council and the mayor and the city manager should be holding those departments responsible that trigger the most costly litigation.
And with that said, we do track things like officers that use top use of force officers and stuff like that. We do make that publicly available on our website. So as residents, you can recognize names of officers and maybe understand what risk you're in yourself in those types of situations. So yeah, you're right. We are the ones that are paying out for this, but we also need to make people tired and angry enough to make our elected officials, make them accountable.
One of the things that I had conversation with and to push with the Illinois Black Caucus states people was the idea of having each police officer carry liability insurance. So where they do something like Neil has said, hit the young man over the head, they pay for it and not the citizenry, because their act was one that caused that, and that the city should only have to pay if they were following some city code that they kind of violated, and we are responsible in some instance with that. But we are pushing that the state requires policemen to carry liability insurance. So when they do some bad act to hurt a citizen, then that citizen sues him and his insurance pays him, like our insurance pays, like
Is
we
there- is
do
there-
with the car.
Is there a specific bill that's been introduced and that we can help advocate for, and who's sponsoring it?
No, we haven't got one of the senators to to their staff people are looking at it and how to put that in a bill. But they thought it was a good idea. And so we hoping that they'll come back soon with something that they will be taking to the legislature. Just like they did with the crime bill. So to start making things change.
Well, if there are no other questions, I would like to thank everyone for showing up tonight. You are the people that are powering this movement. Please tell your friends about what you heard. We're going to make this available on YouTube and on our Facebook page. We're also going to start releasing our data cards that we showed at the beginning. So feel free to share those with your friends and family. And feel free to reach out to us at citizensnetworkprotection.com.
One more question before you go. Are these meetings, well, first of all, how long has CNP been together?
15 years.
Okay, and the reason why I was asking
As
because
a 501c, only two years as a 501c.
okay, because the reason why I asked that question is that I would like to see more participants in these meetings here. I think that's kind of some of your faces look familiar to me. I work in a restaurant business here in town in Bluestone, 10 Mile, the Barn. So growing up here in Evanston, I know a lot of people, and I kind of feel like with something like this, and it's nothing against CNP, I'm just kind of shocked not to see more people in this group talk here, because this is very serious, and we're watching this on TV every day. This needs to stop.
I'm not
Well,
going to make an excuse for the community, but I can tell you we've had events where 40 or 50 people are here. It is election season. Everyone has Zoom fatigue from this stuff. So I think there's a little bit of that going on, but you're right. And we need to be more aggressive with reaching out to our supporters and making them drag a friend along too,
Well, because I'm going to, for sure. I'm going to get off with you guys and literally start posting to people like, dude, you guys got to get in here and get after this.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. This is really cool.
Right, yes. Go to our website and sign up under the volunteer thing. That way you will be in our system for getting emails and stuff. And we can look and see what did you put down as you wanted to volunteer for and everything. And we can pull you in to start working.
Excellent.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
All
you,
right,
guys.
thanks. Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.